I need to start this story in the most boring way possible. Because the terrifying part isn't how it began, it's how normal it felt. No thunderstorm, no flickering lights, no whispered voices in the dark. Just a flat, ground floor, Victorian terrace. Big sash windows, the kind of place that feels warm and golden in October, and strangely hollow by February. I was 26 when I moved in. First place that was fully mine. No roommates, no noise, just quiet independence. And I was a good sleeper. That's important. I wasn't the kind of person who stared at ceilings at 2 a.m. I wasn't jumpy. I didn't have nightmares. I hit the pillow, and I was gone. Always had been. So when it started, I didn't even notice. It was my neighbor who did. Petra, 60s, Polish. Kept herbs on her windowsill, and always smelled faintly of mint leaves and detergent. One morning she knocked on my door with this expression. Not alarmed, not dramatic, just uncertain. She said she saw me the night before, outside, at 3 in the morning, standing in the garden in my pajamas, just staring at the wall. I laughed, told her she must have seen a shadow. She didn't laugh. She said she had woken up for water, looked through her kitchen window, and there I was. Still, silent, looking at nothing. I brushed it off. Of course I did. I was a good sleeper. Then 2 weeks later I woke up with wet feet. Not damp, soaked. The back door was locked. Bolted. Fine. But on the kitchen tile there was a muddy half footprint. Just one. Facing the door. I cleaned it up. Told myself it was sweat. A dream. Stress. We're very good at explaining away things that don't fit our version of reality. The third time, I couldn't explain it. I woke up at 4:37 a.m., standing at the end of my bed, facing the wall. Not the window. Not the door. Just the blank wall. And I was holding my keys. All of them, clutched so tightly the metal teeth had left marks in my palm. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stood there, fully awake now, trying to understand where I had been planning to go. That's when the doctors said the word. Parasomnia, sleepwalking. Stress-related. Common. Harmless. They gave me pamphlets. They told me to lock my doors. Reduce screen time. Install chains. They said it like it was a nuisance, like snoring. For a month, nothing happened. Then, one morning in March, I woke up on the kitchen floor, curled up, the back door wide open, and frost on the concrete outside, with 2 sets of footprints, one going out, one coming back, but only one set facing the house. And that's when I started wondering something I haven't been able to stop wondering since. If I walked out, who turned me around? This is fear spiral. The things we do asleep. The doctors told me it was common. They said parasomnia like it was a harmless little quirk, like biting your nails, like grinding your teeth. They said stress can fragment the boundary between waking and sleeping. They said the body sometimes wakes up before the mind does. They said it happens. But none of them stood on that kitchen floor at 6 in the morning, barefoot, staring at frost that held proof of movement you couldn't remember making. None of them looked at 2 sets of footprints and felt their stomach turn. Because here's the detail that mattered. Both sets led to the step. Both sets came back, but one set faced the house. The other faced the garden. Which means, at some point, I stood on that concrete step in the dark, back turned to my own home, looking outward. Still, motionless, at 4 in the morning, and some mechanism in the sleeping brain, decided to turn me around. I didn't move out immediately. That would have made sense. Instead, I doubled down, installed a heavier bolt, motion sensor light in the garden, a small indoor camera pointed toward the back door, just to prove to myself it was nothing dramatic. The first week, nothing happened. The second week, Nothing happened. The third week, the camera caught something. It was 3:12 a.m. I came into frame slowly from the hallway, walking steadily, not staggering, not confused, just walking. I unlocked the bolt, unhooked the chain, opened the door, stepped outside, and then I stood there for 9 minutes, perfectly still. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't wandering. I wasn't exploring. I was standing, facing the garden. The motion light flicked on, and I didn't react. At 3:21 a.m., I stepped back inside, locked the bolt, hooked the chain, and went back to bed. The next morning, I had no memory of it, but I had the footage, and something about watching yourself from the outside, seeing your body operate without you, changes you. I started sleeping with a chair propped under the bedroom handle, moved the keys higher, even tied a small bell to the back door. If I opened it, I'd hear it. 3 nights later, I woke up in bed. The bell was on the kitchen floor, not broken, untied, placed there, carefully. That's when fear stopped being theoretical. I went back to the GP, referred to a sleep clinic. EEG, monitors, medication adjustment. They recorded 2 episodes in the lab. Both times I got out of bed, walked to the door, tried the handle. When it didn't open, I stood there, again, standing, as if waiting for something. The technician would guide me back to bed. No aggression. No confusion. Just compliance. The sleep specialist used words like automatic motor behavior and partial arousal. He told me shift workers are prone to it. He told me stress can amplify it. He told me the brain is complex. But here's the problem. In the lab, I always walked toward the door. At home, I walked outside. And I stood facing the garden. I moved out 6 months later. I told people it was the damp, the heating, ground floor security. I didn't tell them that sometimes I still woke up with my hand already on the bedroom door handle, turning it, not remembering when I got there, not knowing how long I'd been standing. I still sleep with a light on. But that wasn't the last time sleep did something it wasn't supposed to. Because years later, it wasn't me. It was my son. Nico was 7 when it started. Small kid, big imagination. Always building elaborate Lego cities and explaining complicated theories about why dogs circle before they sit down. Curious. Always curious. We had routine down to a science. Dinner at 6. Bath. Story. Bed by 8. He slept easily. So when my wife woke me one night and said, "Go check on Nico," I expected something ordinary, a bad dream. A glass of water request. Something small. I opened his door. He was standing in the middle of his room, facing the window, arms at his sides. Still. At first I thought he was just looking outside. Kids do that. Then I noticed his eyes, open, but unfocused. There's a difference between looking and seeing. He wasn't seeing anything. "Nico," I said quietly. No response. I walked over, took his hand gently. He let me guide him back to bed, completely limp once horizontal. The next morning, he remembered nothing. It happened twice more that week. Same position, middle of the room, facing the window, like he was waiting. The pediatrician said it was normal. Childhood parasomnia. Monitor it. Keep doors locked. They grow out of it. And for a while, he did. Then one Thursday at 2 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. His bedroom door was ajar. His bed was empty. The bathroom light was off. I found him in the kitchen, sitting upright at the table, hands flat, staring at the wall. Streetlight casting a thin orange glow across his face. Nico. He turned his head toward me, and that was new. Before, he never reacted. This time, he looked directly at me, blank, but deliberate. Then he raised his hand and pointed at the wall behind me. I turned. There was nothing there. Just hallway, coat rack, a drawing he'd made in school. I turned back. He was still pointing. There's nothing there, I said. He shook his head once, side to side, correcting me, then lowered his hand, placed it flat on the table, and turned forward again. I carried him to bed. He never remembered. We saw specialists. Monitoring. Everything came back normal. Then 2 months later, while repairing damp in that exact kitchen wall, the builder found something behind the plaster. Old photographs, wallpapered over, a family from decades ago, standing in that same kitchen. Same layout, same wall Nico had pointed at. Nothing sinister, just history. But here's what won't leave me. Nico hasn't sleepwalked once since that wall was replastered. Not once, it's been 2 years. And sometimes when the light hits that wall a certain way, he stops and just looks at it. 7-year-old kids don't stare at walls. Not like that. And if that was where the story ended, maybe I'd still call it coincidence. But it wasn't, because the sleeping brain doesn't just walk. Sometimes it drives. The house at 3:14 a.m. I should say this clearly. I am not superstitious. I've worked night shifts in hospital corridors where the only thing louder than machines is silence. I've watched monitors flatten. I've watched people leave this world gently and violently. After enough of that, you stop believing in shadows. You believe in biology, in chemistry, in electrical signals misfiring. You believe there is always a boring explanation. And I wanted the boring explanation. I had never sleepwalked as a child. Never as a teenager. Not once in 31 years. I live alone. Small rental. Inner North. Ordinary street. Tram line. Cafes. The biggest local drama is usually someone parking too close to a driveway. I work 4 nights on, 4 nights off. Shift work. Rotating sleep. The sleep specialist later told me that alone increases the odds of parasomnia. So when the first driving incident happened, I didn't panic. I was confused. I received a parking fine. Time-stamped. 3:14 a.m. location. 2 blocks from my house. Clearway zone. There was a photograph attached. My car, my plates, parked exactly where it shouldn't be. At 3:14 in the morning. On a Tuesday. I had gone to bed at 11 p.m. I woke up at 7 a.m. I did not remember driving. I appealed, lost the appeal. The image didn't lie. That should have terrified me. But confusion is louder than fear in the beginning. I contacted my GP again. Sleep specialist. Immediate driving suspension recommendation. Monitoring device installed in the vehicle. Sleep study scheduled. I remember thinking it was excessive. It had happened once. Then came the lab. 17 sensors attached to my scalp. Chest leads. Camera mounted in the corner. I slept. And I got up twice. Walked to the door. Tried the handle. Stood there. Waiting. The technician guided me back. No resistance. No awareness. When the driving monitor report came in a week later, it filled in the rest. 2:58 a.m., engine started. 3:02 a.m., turn left. 3:05 a.m., turn right. 3:07 a.m., parked. Not randomly, not erratically, properly parallel parked. In front of house number 41. A house I had no reason to visit. I stayed there for 22 minutes, then reversed the route, pulled back into my driveway, engine off, lights off, door locked, and apparently, den of lights off, door locked, and apparently returned to bed. I drove past that house in daylight. Red brick terrace. Neat front garden. Wind chime near the door. Nothing remarkable. Nothing familiar. I don't know what I expected. Recognition. A flicker of memory. A reason. Instead, I felt something worse. Nothing. Just absence. But I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I knocked. An older woman answered, small, gray hair, alert eyes. I apologized, explained, as calmly as a person can, that I have a sleep disorder and apparently parked outside her house at 3 in the morning. I told her I just wanted to make sure it hadn't alarmed her. She stared at me. Then she asked, "What's your mother's name?" I told her, and she started crying. Her name was Janet. She had been my mother's closest friend for 8 years, before immigration, before Melbourne, before I was old enough to remember much. They'd lost contact. Years had passed. Different suburbs, different lives. Janet had moved here long ago. My mother never knew. My mother had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer 3 months prior. She hadn't told many people yet. She'd been quiet, reflective. Once, she mentioned missing someone. Someone from her old life. Didn't say a name. Just someone. Janet had been thinking about my mother, too. Had found old photos. Had considered reaching out. And then one Tuesday at 3:14 a.m., I parked outside her house. I had never consciously known her address. Never been told where she lived. The sleep specialist said coincidence. Familiar road patterns. Subconscious mapping. Maybe I'd driven past before without noticing. The brain stores more than we think. That's true. It does. But here's what unsettles me. The car stayed there for 22 minutes. What was I doing? Sitting in the dark, engine off, looking at the house, waiting. For what? My mother and Janet reconnected. They had dinner 3 times since. They laugh like they're 30 again. Last month, they sat at my kitchen table and laughed so hard my mother spilled her wine. Janet said something in Afrikaans. My mother covered her face and shook with laughter. I watched them, and I thought about the sleeping brain. About what it might know that we don't. About all the roots we absorb unconsciously. The addresses on envelopes. The names in passing conversations. The faces in windows. The quiet griefs we don't articulate. The part of us that keeps track, files it, stores it, and then acts without asking permission. I still hope there's a boring explanation. I really do. But sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and I think about that car, parked in the dark, 22 silent minutes, and I wonder something I can't quite shake. What if the sleeping brain isn't random? What if it's purposeful? And if it is, what else might it be capable of doing while we're not there? When the pattern repeats, if the story ended with coincidence, I would have accepted it. Sleepwalking, stress, subconscious navigation, a grieving mind connecting old threads. There are scientific papers that would happily wrap it all up, but patterns are where coincidence starts to feel thin. It didn't happen immediately. For nearly 5 months after the Janet incident, nothing unusual occurred. I complied with every recommendation. Regular sleep schedule, blackout curtains, no caffeine after 2 p.m., number screens before bed, medication adjusted, driving privileges restored under monitoring. The episodes stopped, or at least they appeared to. Then one morning I woke up standing in my hallway, not confused, not groggy, just standing, hand resting lightly against the wall, like I'd paused mid-task. The clock read 3:18 a.m. My bedroom door was open. The front door was closed, locked, chain secure. I checked the car, still in the driveway. The monitoring app showed no movement, so technically, nothing had happened. Except, I wasn't in bed, and I had no memory of leaving it. I convinced myself it was minor, a partial arousal. The brain glitching between sleep stages. It happens. Then it happened again, 3 nights later, 3:11 a.m., standing in the kitchen, facing the back door, not touching it, just facing it. The same stillness from years ago, the same posture captured on camera. Except this time, I felt something different. Awareness, not full awareness, but the faintest thread of it, like surfacing briefly from underwater. I remember the texture of the tile under my feet, the hum of the refrigerator, the subtle clicking sound pipes make at night, then nothing. Morning, bed, memory gap. That was new. Sleep specialists call it state overlap. Fragments of consciousness intruding into parasomnia. They assured me it wasn't uncommon. But here's what I didn't tell them. The times were clustering. 3:12, 3:14, 3:18. Between 3 o'clock and 3:20 a.m. Consistently. Our circadian rhythms dip around then. Body temperature lowest, melatonin high. It's a vulnerable window neurologically. There's science behind it. There always is, until there isn't. The third recurrence came with evidence, not movement, not driving, just something small. My phone. My phone. Just something small. My phone. I don't use my phone during the night. It stays charging on the dresser. But one morning I found it on the kitchen counter, screen unlocked. Notes, app open, blank page, cursor blinking, timestamp, 3:16 a.m. no text, just the cursor, waiting. That unsettled me more than the driving, because driving requires coordination. But unlocking a phone, opening an app, navigating to notes, that's layered cognition. That's sequence. I checked the sleep lab footage from prior visits. In those recordings, when I got up, my movements were simple. Door, handle, stand, return. This was more complex. I didn't report the phone incident because I didn't want them to suspend my license again, because I wanted it to be over. Instead, I set up a camera in the kitchen again, subtle, hidden, not dramatic. The next episode was shorter. 3:09 a.m. I entered frame, walked to the counter, picked up my phone, unlocked it, stood there, completely still. Completely still, screen light illuminating my face. Not typing, not scrolling, just holding it for 6 minutes. Then I set it down, returned to bed. I watched that footage at noon, in daylight, coffee in hand, trying to feel rational, trying to feel clinical. But something was off. It wasn't just that I was standing there. It was my expression. There was focus, not emptiness like Miko had, not the blank absence of deep parasomnia. There was direction in my eyes, intent. I zoomed in, frame by frame. At 3:14 a.m., exactly my lips moved, just slightly, as if forming a word. There was no audio, just motion. It might have been nothing. It might have been jaw relaxation. It might have been normal REM intrusion. But the time was 3:14. Again. And here's the thing about repeated timestamps. Your brain starts anticipating them, even when you don't wanna. The next night, I woke up at 3:07 a.m. naturally. No alarm, no sound, just alert, heart steady, mind clear. I stayed in bed, didn't move, watched the clock tick. 3:10, 3:12, 3:14, and for a moment I felt something, not external, not a sound, not a presence, just an internal pull, like muscle memory, like standing up feels inevitable after sitting too long. My body wanted to move, toward the hallway, toward the kitchen, toward the door. It wasn't compulsion, it wasn't fear, it was familiarity. As if something inside me had a routine scheduled. I didn't move, I lay there. And slowly it passed. Morning came. No incident that should have reassured me. Instead, it confirmed something worse. The episodes weren't random. They were rhythmic, and rhythms imply structure. The final shift came when I checked the monitoring data from my car. Just out of curiosity. No new driving. But the internal GPS system logs ignition attempts. There were 3. At 3:13 a.m. on 3 separate nights, the engine hadn't turned over. Because the keys were inside the house. But the car had registered door handle interaction. Someone had touched the driver's side handle 3 times. I live alone. Motion sensor footage from the driveway. Blank, because I'd unplugged that camera months ago. Told myself I didn't need it anymore. The next morning, I walked outside barefoot, stood next to the car, placed my hand on the driver's side handle. It felt ordinary. Cold metal. Nothing mystical. Nothing dramatic. But I couldn't answer one question. If I didn't remember going outside, who tried to open the car, and why always at 3:13 a.m.? I haven't told the specialist about the ignition attempts yet. Because once you admit escalation, control is taken from you. Driving privileges gone. More monitoring. More sensors. More cameras. And part of me is afraid of what they'll find if they watch continuously. Because here's the truth I haven't said out loud. The episodes feel less accidental now. Less like glitch. More like rehearsal. And I don't know what the final version is practicing for. The night almost completed. Up until that point, everything could still be explained. Parasomnia, shift work, fragmented sleep cycles, subconscious motor routines. Even the timestamps had plausible biology behind them. But escalation doesn't announce itself. It shifts one small detail, and suddenly the entire pattern feels intentional. The night it almost completed began like every other shift cycle reset. 4 nights on. 4 nights off. I just finished my last night's shift and forced myself to stay awake until 9 p.m. to stabilize my rhythm. Ate dinner. Showered. No screens. No caffeine. I even felt calm. That should have warned me. I fell asleep easily. No dreams that I remember. No stress. No anxiety. Then, at 3:12 a.m., my eyes opened. Not gradually. Not groggily, instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. The room was dark except for the streetlight glow cutting through the blinds. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel confusion. I felt expectation. My body already knew what time it was. I didn't need to look at the clock. I knew. And this time, instead of fighting it, I decided something dangerous. I would let it happen. Consciously. I would observe. If there was a pattern, I wanted to see the end of it. I swung my legs out of bed. The floor was cold. I stood up slowly. Nothing dramatic happened. No dizziness, no disorientation. Just quiet. I walked into the hallway. The house felt different at that hour. Not haunted. Not sinister. Just paused. Like the world was holding its breath. I moved toward the kitchen. Each step felt both voluntary and inevitable. Like walking downstairs you've memorized. When I reached the kitchen doorway, I stopped. And that's when I realized something new. The back door wasn't my focus. The car wasn't my focus. The counter wasn't my focus. It was the wall. The same empty stretch of wall where my son once pointed in another house. Different home. Different city. Same instinct. I stood there staring at it, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt that strange overlap again. Half inside my body, half observing it, then my right hand lifted, not toward the door, toward the wall, slowly, like I was about to touch it. I don't know what I expected. Heat, cold, resistance, but my fingers hovered an inch from the surface. And I felt something shift inside me, a thought that wasn't fully formed, a memory I didn't recognize, not visual, not auditory, more like direction. The same internal pull that makes you turn your head when someone says your name in a crowd, except no one had spoken. Then I heard it, not a voice, not words, just the soft metallic click from outside. The car, central locking disengaging. One click, quiet, precise. My heart rate spiked. That was not inside my head. That was mechanical, real. I stepped back from the wall, walked quickly to the front window, pulled the curtain aside just enough to see the driveway. The headlights flickered, not fully on, just a faint pulse. Then dark again. I stood there frozen. No one was near the car. No movement on the street. No passing pedestrians. No other vehicles. Just stillness. I checked my phone. 3:14 a.m. exactly. And then something happened that I can not fully explain. The urge shifted. Not toward the car, not toward the door, but toward stillness. Like whatever sequence had been building reached a point and stalled. Like a program waiting for input. I stayed there. Didn't move, didn't breathe deeply. Just existed. At 3:16 a.m. the urge faded. Not dramatically. Just slowly unwound. Like tension releasing from a muscle. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. At 7 a.m., I went outside. The car doors were locked, but when I opened the driver's side and checked the dashboard log, there was an entry. Remote unlock detected. 3:14 a.m. I live. Alone, no one else has the key fob. The spare is in a drawer inside. I checked. It was still there. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, engine off, hands on the steering wheel, trying to stay rational. Modern cars glitch. Signal interference happens. Keyless entry systems misfire. There are forums full of people discussing phantom unlocks. There are technical explanations. There are always technical explanations. But here's the part that unsettles me most. The car didn't attempt ignition that night. No door handle attempts. No movement logs. Just unlock, like something was waiting for me to get inside. Like the previous nights had been rehearsal. And this was the cue. If I hadn't stopped at the wall, if I had stepped outside, if I had followed the routine instead of interrupting it, would the engine have started? Would I have driven somewhere new? Somewhere I've never consciously been? That's the question I haven't been able to answer. Since that night, the pattern has paused. No hallway awakenings, no kitchen standing, no ignition attempts. Number 314 entries. It's been 6 weeks. Which should feel like relief. But instead, it feels like quiet. And quiet, when something has been building rhythmically, doesn't feel like safety. It feels like recalibration. Because if this was parasomnia, why did it escalate in sequence? Standing, driving, parking, phone, ignition attempts, each stage more complex, more deliberate, and always circling back to the same time window, 3:12. 3:14, 3:18, the lowest dip in circadian rhythm, the most neurologically vulnerable window, or the thinnest boundary. I don't know which explanation scares me more, that my brain is capable of orchestrating movements I don't remember, or that something about unfinished thoughts, unresolved grief, buried memory patterns, can move us physically through the world while we are absent. I still slay up with a light on. I still wake sometimes with my hand on the bedroom door handle. But now I stay there, still, waiting to see if something inside me tries to finish what it started. So far it hasn't. But every night at 3:14 a.m., my body stirs slightly, just enough to remind me. The pattern isn't gone, it's paused. What the sleeping mind knows here's the part that unsettles me the most. Not the standing, not the driving, not the timestamps. It's the realization that the sleeping brain is not chaotic. It's efficient. When you sleep, your mind doesn't shut down. It reorganizes, it sorts, it replays, it strengthens patterns. It files away things you didn't consciously notice, addresses, conversations half-heard. emotions unspoken, grief you didn't process, connections you didn't know you made. And maybe, just maybe, sometimes it acts on them. We like to believe that consciousness is the captain of the ship, that when we close our eyes, everything inside us powers down safely, but science tells us something more complicated. Motor systems can activate without awareness. Navigation centers can function without supervision. Habit loops can complete themselves. The brain is capable of running programs without asking permission. Most of the time, that's harmless. You turn over in bed. You mumble. You walk to the fridge. But sometimes it scales. Sometimes the program grows more intricate. Standing becomes walking. Walking becomes driving. Driving becomes intention. And if you interrupt it, if you wake up in the middle of it, you are left staring at the aftermath of something you didn't authorize. That's the true fear, not ghosts, not shadows, not something outside your window. It's the possibility that there is a part of you capable of movement, decision, and direction without you. And maybe that part isn't malicious. Maybe it's protective. Maybe it's trying to solve things you won't face while awake. Maybe it's reaching for people you miss. Maybe it's circling unfinished memories. Maybe it's just biology doing what biology does. But here's the question I'll leave you with. If your body woke up tonight at 3:14 a.m. and walked somewhere, would you trust where it was going? Or would you be afraid of what it already knows? Because every single one of us has patterns we don't notice, routes we could walk blindfolded, names we react to before we understand why, and deep inside the architecture of your brain, there are doors that open without your permission. Tonight, when you fall asleep, your body will enter that quiet place where awareness loosens its grip, where logic softens, where boundaries blur. And most nights, you'll wake up exactly where you expect to be. But if you ever wake up standing in the hallway, or holding your keys, or staring at a wall you don't remember approaching, don't panic. Just ask yourself one thing. What unfinished pattern might your mind be trying to complete? This has been Fear Spiral. If this story unsettled you in a way that lingers, if it made you glance at your bedroom door just now, then you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Subscribe, stay aware, and sleep carefully, because sometimes the scariest movements are the ones we don't remember making.